evening, Demon fans, and welcome back to the Demonland podcast. My name is Andy, and rumours of this podcast's demise have been greatly exaggerated, at least for this week. Joining me tonight to discuss a clinical victory at the Docklands is Bin-Man. Good evening, Bin-Man.
Good evening, Andy. Good evening, Demonland. Good evening to Donald, who played pretty well in Frio's win yesterday, who's just decided right now to go off his nana and start barking. So, terrific win. And I really enjoyed, went by myself. And I have to say, I just in of itself, I had a great day of the footy, really enjoyed it. It was a fun afternoon and more games at 1 o'clock, I reckon. I'm back home, able to cook dinner and not eat a grumpy. I even watched the replay. Time to watch the replay and then the F1 qualifying. It was a terrific day on Saturday.
Yeah, I must say, if I've got a choice to make out of 1 p.m. on a Saturday or 3:15 p.m. on a Sunday, or 4 o'clock on a Sunday, I'll take the 1 p.m. on a Saturday every day of the week. It's much more, I wouldn't say, it's probably more family friendly, but I go to the footy by myself. But yeah, it is much better. And who'd you say is in the background there?
That's Oscar, which I thought I was very clever getting the dog called Oscar and getting it past the keeper, so to speak. But my wife was even cleverer. She spelled it with a K when we registered him with the German style. So Oscar with a K, that's barking in the background. And I actually even enjoyed being at Marvel, to be honest. It was quite a good atmosphere there. And like it must have looked, on telly like there's not many people because the top deck is closed. But I thought 16,000 given the game that shall not be mentioned the previous week and where we're at this season, given the fact that we're playing Eagles. I don't know what the crowd was against the Saints, but it was probably not much more than 20,000 against the Saints. 16,000, there were bugger all Eagles fans, as you could imagine. So I thought it was a good turnout, and it was also a really good atmosphere. And I'm on the west side of town, the southwest, so it's really easy for I get the train in straight into Southern Cross, and I'm at the footy in 10 minutes from when I get off the train. It's I had a great day of the footy and enjoyed it. And I think as much as last week was last quarter was a horror show, if you look at it, 7 of the last 8 quarters have been pretty impressive, and it's easy to get caught up in the negativity, I think, but there's really a lot to like about where we're heading, and in particular, implementing this transition game plan, and we saw it to good effect on Saturday in terms of how well we moved the ball, I thought.
We'll talk more about that and more about what we can take away from playing the Eagles a bit later on in the show. But first, we'll just do some housekeeping work. There was no feedback for us left this week. And, of course, leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts really helps to boost the show, and we do appreciate that feedback. And as a token of our gratitude, we do give people a shout-out on the show. So, make sure to follow us, to leave that feedback, and we will give you a shout out next week. Make sure if you do follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and if you want to leave feedback, ask a question, share a comment for the show, you can do so under our weekly podcast post or just slide into our DMs. You can download and listen to the Demonland podcast on Apple, Google, Spotify, or any of your favorite podcasting apps. And in addition, you can also watch and listen to us on YouTube. Just search for Demonland Podcast to find our channel and subscribe. And if you want to connect with other passionate D's fans and you haven't checked out our forum, head on over to demonland.com, sign up and join in the conversation. You can have a chat with fellow D's supporters from across Australia and around the world. It's completely free. And in addition to posting any questions or comments for the show, you'll find endless discussions on all things Melbourne Demons. And if you want to call into the show live, head on over to demonland.com and hit the call button. It'll take you to a Microsoft Teams link in your browser. You won't need to download any software. I'll answer your call and bring you on when there is a break in the conversation. And if you want to listen to the show live, head on over to demonland.com on Monday nights at 8 p.m. I'm going to get straight into our match overview. And in a week where pressure on Simon Goodwin has reached new heights following a horror final quarter capitulation against St Kilda, the Melbourne Demons delivered the emphatic response their supporters were crying out for. Returning to the scene of last week's crime under the roof of Marvel Stadium, the D's produced their biggest win and highest score of the season, dismantling a listless West Coast Eagles outfit by 83 points. What started as a relatively even contest in the first half turned into a third quarter avalanche. Avalanche as Melbourne piled on 10 unanswered goals in a blistering 30-minute display. Their equal best quarter under Goodwin to turn a 22-point halftime lead into a 63-point margin at the final break. It was quite simply football at its most dominant. When the Demons needed a response, it was their captain and vice-captain who led the charge. Max Gawn, playing arguably one of his finest games of the season, dominated every facet of the contest. 21 disposals, 29 hitouts, 8 marks, 9 intercept possessions and a goal. His intercept marking across half-back was a persistent thorn in West Coast's attempt to transition, and his control in the air disrupted any semblance of structure that the Eagles tried to establish. And beside him, Jack Viney brought his signature grunt, celebrating his 234th game, surpassing his father Todd with a trademark performance. 25 disposals, 20 contested, 13 clearances and a goal, all while carrying a suspected fractured wrist. It was a masterclass in leadership and physical resilience. The Demons midfield trio, Clayton Oliver, Christian Petrarca and Viney, comprehensively outclassed a weakened Eagles engine room missing Harley Reid. Oliver collected 28 disposals, 13 contested, and got back to his efficient best. Petrarca was explosive and decisive, drilling the ball forward and adding a goal of his own. Christian Salem, often the forgotten man, played his most complete game of the year with 30 disposals off half-back, combining with class and composure. Melbourne won the clearances 40-30, contested possessions 145-103, and piled on 58 inside 50s, a statistical domination that mirrored the scoreboard. And after a quiet start, Cozzy Pickett ignited in the third term, notching 5 score involvements from 8 touches and finishing with 26 disposals and 10 score involvements. Bailey Fritsch rediscovered his goal-kicking touch, finishing with 4 goals, a much-needed return to form in the past few weeks for Melbourne's most dangerous small forward. And Harrison Petty and Harvey Langford chipped in with 3 goals apiece, while Jacob Van Ruin added 2 in a display that showed the Demons' forward mix functioning at near full capacity. It was a day to remember for former Eagle Jai Cully, who made his debut for Melbourne against the team that delisted him last season. And Cully not only kicked his first goal in the red and blue, but experienced his first win in his 13th AFL game. His soaring mark and composed finish were among the highlights of the day, and his 13 disposals and 7 marks proved he belonged. He ended with 2 goals and a lot of pride playing for a club that he grew up supporting. While Melbourne's attack stole the headline, the backline was equally instrumental. Jake Bowie's smother and rebound that led to a goal highlighted the team's intent and connectivity. Trem Rivers and Tom McDonald were solid, while Ed Langdon, often maligned this year, got back to his 2-way running best and even snagged a goal. Melbourne's 10-goal third term was not just a game-defining stretch, it was a cathartic purge of a season's frustration. Every chain from half-back turned into a dangerous forward foray. Defensive pressure was elite, decision-making crisp, and leaders stood up while the youth injected energy. And following a brutal week of scrutiny, this was the kind of mature, ruthless and connected display that reminded fans of what this team can be when it all clicks. However, there's no escaping the reality that this win came against the last-place West Coast Eagles, who are in the midst of a rebuild and are without a number of their core star players and have signalled to the AFL their intent to seek priority assistance. 7 of Melbourne's last 8 quarters at Marvel Stadium have now been won by a total of over 120 points, though the one that we lost will remain an open wound until it's properly healed. With 3 rounds to go, Melbourne won't be a part of September, but we can still shape it. We face final hopefuls in the Western Bulldogs and Hawthorn before a season-ending clash against Collingwood, which could have implications on the Magpies' double-chance hopes. Be man.
Great summary, Andy. Very impressive and nice little reframe there in the middle there. So, yeah, Yeah, as I said, a lot to like. And of course, like as you say, it's a given that not only are they the bottom of the table side, they've only won one game, haven't they, this season? So, and as you note, it's, they're without their best defender, their best forward and skipper, and their best mid. So, but look, of course
and
that's
a few other. But where was Jaden Hunt? Is he not getting a game, or because
he's not getting a game?
He wasn't on the injury list. Okay,
he's not getting a game. He got dropped a few weeks ago, and So I mean, of course, yeah.
How is he not getting a game in this West Coast Eagles team?
Yeah, it's a good question, isn't it? So, I mean, they've got a long way to go. Obviously, it's interesting. They're trying to implement. As us, including those, lots of long handballs, forward handballs, which are great when they come off, but they're so frustrating when they don't. So, of course, all that's true about West Coast. But, I mean, the season's sort of done and dusted in terms of not making finals, but not done and dusted in terms of what we can get out of it. And so leaving aside, where they're at, just imagine if we'd come out and only won by 25 points or 30 points or 15 points. I was actually really, really impressed about a number of things. And one of which, I thought the attitude of the players was terrific, and I'll get into it in the stats files. It's really reflected in the stats, and in particular the pressure in the contest. And sure, we're playing the Eagles, but it's not like we just turned up and thought, well, we're not going to put in an effort. And that's completely reflected in the effort stats, which are all of the contest related stats, and pressure and tackling. They're all effort based stats, and they're the stats that coaches love. They don't tell a tale about relative ability between two sides. They tell one thing and one thing only, which is effort. And our effort was first class. I thought our leaders were first class. After what was just a horror the previous week in terms of that last quarter, I was in shock and after the game. But, on the back of that, as I've talked about on the podcast a bazillion times, I've followed Melbourne for over 50 years, and whole seasons have gone past where we've been as bad as West Coast. Whole seasons have gone past where, we've struggled to get a game, and plenty of games where we've collapsed in a heap one week and not been able to pick ourselves up regardless of the opposition the following week. And so I thought from, the coaching staff right through the playing group, I thought the attitude was first class. I had the binoculars on the team a fair bit on the weekend. They seem to be really enjoying themselves. They seem to be really cohesive. They seem to be really connected group, which, given the pressure they must have been under the previous week, I thought was commendable. And so, I thoroughly enjoyed the game. I could give two hoots about, the strength of the opposition. I wouldn't know how many games of footy I've seen live where Melbourne's kicked 10 goals in a quarter. It would be, I could probably almost literally count it on two hands, and if that, and so loved it. I actually thought and I'll touch on this in a second in the stats files, their effort was pretty good. It fell away after half time, but, I thought it was actually a better game than what I watched the replay, and it was a better game than, the way they were talking on or the energy of the commentary, I thought, and some of the commentary on Demoland. I thought the standard, or the effort levels, at least in that first half, from the Eagles was pretty good actually. And I really enjoyed it. A lot to take out of it, and we'll get into that as we go forward, obviously.
So you can go into your stats files right now, Ben.
No worries. I thought there was a lot to like about it. It's a great point you made about the 7 of the 8 quarters, and I'll touch on that. I'll talk first of all about the player ratings. Max Gawn had another just fantastic game, 21 match points, keeping in mind 20 is considered an elite game of AFL footy. Jack Viney, he was brilliant at 17.9 player rating points, his best game for some time. He had a massive third quarter when we went crazy, 7.4 in that quarter. Caleb Windsor had his best game, I think, since last season. What did you think of his game?
I thought it was good. I like him in the middle. I think we've got a bit of a question about that and sort of our midfield setups. So, I think the back line experiment failed for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I think I like him better either on the wing or put him in the middle for bits and pieces here and there.
I agreed. I thought he was excellent, particularly in that last quarter, which was his highest rating quarter, his 6.6 player rating points, and he was excellent. So he was good. And then I thought, this is where the player ratings I quite like, because Jai Cully, you mentioned he had 12 possessions, is that right?
13 possessions. I think 7 marks as well.
7 marks, and so he had a pretty quiet first quarter, and that was reflected. Yeah, and that was reflected his player rating, only 0.3 in that first quarter, but he progressively built into it, 2.9. Then in the quarter when we, asserted ourselves and won the game essentially, and excuse me, he's 7.9, 4.1 in the last. So for his debut for the Melbourne Footy Club, he was our 5th, 6th highest rated player with 15.1, just ahead of Melksham, who 14.7, and that was all in his first 3 quarters, getting subbed off soon, not long into the last quarter. And just a couple other players. I thought Kate Chandler, he was just below Melk, was excellent. His effort was excellent. He showed real leadership. I thought his gut running was exceptional. His ability to work up and down the ground. He's really he's the player who's picked up Nibbler's mantle, I think, and he's become a really critical player with that up and down the ground gut running and good decision making. And then Harvey Langford, 14.3. I thought he had a great game, and he starts sticking those marks, and he's going to be a real challenge to match up. But I missed one player, and our highest rated player, Max Gawn, got our coach's vote, I think. So our highest rated
9 and 9. So I don't know who gave who, but Viney got 9 and Max got 9. So
yeah, so
both coaches gave either one the 5 and the 4.
Yeah, which reinforces the point about the leaders, doesn't it? So after the last week, they really performed and really stepped up. But our best player on the ground for player rating, and I actually think that this probably, I think he was best player on the ground ratings or otherwise, was Frida. Another excellent week, terrific form, 21.9 player rating points, 8.5 in the third quarter when we won the game, 7.7. His marking was excellent. I thought, and his attitude was excellent. He was another player who really looked to be enjoying himself, and it was great to see his last few weeks. His kicking has been right back on song, and including that bomb from outside 50. That was something incredible. Harry Sharpie, he must run a lot because he had another quiet game. I'm not quite sure, to be honest.
He came on late. I think he came on late,
yeah, he did.
So last, and he wouldn't have played.
He did a couple of okay things, but 0.8, he was. We had no players in the negative, so. So it's just some good stats to pick out. So again, I don't think there's much value in sort of putting them. It's a given that we were playing a team that isn't in great form. However, one of the things about that is that it really provides an opportunity to see the game plan that we're trying to implement. And I thought that was a really interesting part of the game because particularly in the second half, their pressure in the first half was actually quite good, but it dropped away in the second half. But it meant that you could really see, that idea of a bit of a training run. Well, at training, you practice what you're trying to implement on the weekend, and you could really get a good sense of what we're trying to do in terms of our ball movement from the back half. Our defensive contested possessions. By the way, contested possessions, I mentioned last week that they're often, the previous week, they're conflated with disposal, which does my head in completely. Commentators still make it, they're not disposals, they're possessions. And I talked about the different types. So post-clearance contested possessions, a hard ball get, loose ball get, contested mark, contested knock-on, and freeze for. And so there's a whole range of others in the other contested possession categories. An easy way to think about it, I thought about this at the footy, is at one point it flashed up on the scoreboard. The stats actually at the Marvel are pretty good in terms of what the info that they give fans watching.
Yeah, it's much better than the G. We don't get that at the G, do we? With the possessions and
Exactly.
5 leading possessions, handballs, whatever, inside 50s, tackles. We don't get that at the G.
No, and I found it quite useful in this game, particularly because it didn't feel like in the second half there wasn't pressure. But at one point, and through the game they put this up, but at one point both teams had 41% time in possession.
Oh, yeah, they were doing that time in forward half. And I really like those things anyway.
Yeah, so 41% both teams' time in possession, that's 82. That means there's 18% of the time the ball's in contest. Neither team have the ball. Neither team have won it. And in a post-clearance, for instance, you win it by getting the hard ball get or your loose ball get. There you contested possessions. The ball's in contest. The team that wins it, that's why free four is a contested possession. It seems a bit weird, but the ball's in contest and then decisions made and a team gets a free kick and they won that particular contested possession. So post clearance, as I've mentioned before, really important stat in footy because it's about winning the ball while the ball is, post obviously a stoppage clearance, which is a critical time, obviously, in terms of what happens, either winning territory or ideally scoring. We were plus 27 for post clearance possession, which was massive, including plus 12 for loose ball gets. We had 8 more contested marks to them, which is one of those stats as well. Impressive. We'll talk about Maxi in a sec, but his contested marking is just gone to another level this year. I can't recall ever him marking as well as he has been this year. Hardball gets plus 4. I can't remember if I said that. And contested knocks on. Freeze 4, 12-9 in post clearance. Can't criticise the umpire this week. In fact, quite the opposite. They completely passed the test for me around, for me, good umpiring is just when you don't notice them. And I barely noticed them and it barely got irritated at him at any stage. Even the one where there was one that Viney could have got one for getting his head ripped off and he was having a good chuckle. But that was about the only one. And, they're pretty red hot sometimes on holding the ball. And just a theme, by the way, this has just been bugging me all season is what did Clary do to the umpiring fraternity in his first 2 or 3 years of footy? He cannot win a free kick. And they're red hot on him. It's like every single week. But, I thought the umpiring was pretty good. So expected score, another week where our expected score was pretty much bang on what we did score. Expected score was 131. We scored 139. Their expected score was 59.6 and they scored 56. So we won it handsomely on both expected score and actual score. So we were 3-5 at first quarter time and I wasn't alone. I can guess that gnashing of teeth thinking, oh no, here's another game where we're, going to limp towards a win, but, could have been if we'd just been accurate, So 3-5 at quarter time, including a couple of misses that they'd like back. But after that, we were 18-8. So for the rest of the last 3 quarters, we scored 18 goals, 8 including 10-2 in the premiership quarter, the third. Now, we had 14 goals, 87 from set shots. Now, to be fair, that's a touch flattering as we had 21 shots in total. So I'm guessing the 4 didn't make it or were on the full. The 14 goals, 87 from set shot is our most accurate return from set shots this season and our best total return for set shots since round 2023. So terrific. You can't knock that. And Choco finally earned his goal kicking money this week. Score sources, talk a little bit more about this in a sec about our transition, but as evidence of our transition, and, of course, if you want to take a more negative view as maybe some of West Coast's poor defensive work, is we kicked 3 goals, 19 from kick-ins, including that beautiful set play from Bowie, putting it out in front of Maxi. Handball goes down to Melk and Melk kicks the goal. 3 kicks. What's that? 2 kicks. Beautiful bit of play. Centre bounces, they were horrible. Plus 19 for centre bounces. To be honest, though, they only scored 1 point. So we scored 20 from centre bounces, wasn't it great to see Clary run forward at pace through the midfield? I thought he was, getting back to somewhere near his best in that game. Terrific game, I thought. Stoppage around the ground, just plus 9. this is where, if you want to pick one number where the big difference was turnover. 11 goals, 571 from turnover to 428 plus 43 for turnover is a complete mauling. That wasn't all on just how poor they were. Our defensive work was really good in this space, and it's interesting without Lever and May there is, we actually looked a little bit quicker, and I thought we pace down back, particularly given one of our key defenders is T-Mac, who's pretty slow. I thought our overall intercepting work was excellent. We were plus 10 for intercepts in total, 65. And intercept marks, though, was the big one, 25 to 10 plus 15, and isn't Disco. Just he reads the ball well, and I just love the way he attacks the ball and takes the mark rather than punches. We were 57-48 plus 9 for tackles. This, to me, was, just before I go to this one, intercepts. I've heard this a couple of times now. T-Mac is top 10 in the AFL for intercept possessions, which for average intercept possessions, which really shows, to be honest, I made the case as to why I understood perhaps why they dropped him, given he's maybe it's a pace issue. But, I mean, he's been awesome, really, and he was awesome again on the weekend. I thought, top 10 for average intercept possessions is pretty damn good, I reckon. But the big one for me was just remarkable, and this is what they did show this. I was tracking this through the whole match because they put up this stat regularly at Marvel, was 22 tackles inside our 50 to just 2, plus 20 for tackles inside 50. That is just banana. Like, that has to be our tackle inside 50 count. Willow, I should check this before I come on the podcast because I constantly say stuff like that. But I can't imagine we've had too many games. In fact, if you're out there, Willow, I'll ask you on the thread, but we can't have too many games in the last 4 or 5 years where we've had 22 tackles inside 50. That to me speaks to a team that was really there for the game. They turned up, and for me that was just about the most positive thing in the game, is that we so easily could have, gone through the motions, and if there were divisions or something that fall out from last week, it would have shown up in those numbers. You don't have 22 tackles inside 50 if your team haven't come to play and they're not fully switched on. So I thought that was brilliant. This was a pretty dispiriting number not for us, for the Eagles. Defensive one-on-one loss percentage, 52.4%. One-on-one loss they had, the Eagles, and we only had 14.3. So really impressive in terms of our ability to beat their forwards. They're all young and same as their defenders, but nonetheless, you can only defeat who's in front of you. Points from defensive half. So this is really, I think, important. We're leaving aside again that last quarter last week. The first 3 quarters, our transition was excellent, first class, and it's been really good all season. It's trending upwards. Of course, it's not been, it's been a disappointing season, but we are implementing a new game plan, and on those metrics is that we're really, really doing a good job implementing it and getting there, I think. So plus 51 from defensive half in this game against a season average of 28.4. And the transition score changes, leaving aside them, because if you don't want to compare it against them, but possession chain to score percentage, 30.6 in this game against an AFL average 20.7. Defensive 50 to forward, 50% transition, 29% of the time against an AFL average 22.8. Defensive 50 to score percentage, this is really impressive, 19.4 to AFL average 9.5. And defensive half to score percentage, 19% of the time from our defensive half, getting it in there. And scoring, they were only 5.1, which is woeful, but 19% against this AFL average of 12.8. They're really terrific numbers. That's exactly what Goody and the coaching staff would be looking at in terms of metrics that say we're on the right track with a transition game plan. Just finally, the team pressure, and not just finally, just a couple of things. So again, this is pure effort. If they're not turning up with effort, then this is where it'll show. We came out 190, 200 as elite, 190, and they weren't too bad, 172. So plus 18 though. The second quarter, 183, they were 187. So we're actually only plus 14 for in that first half. It was the second half where we got to work, 184 to 164 plus 20 in the third quarter, 173 to 158 plus 15 in the last quarter. Overall, 183 to 170 plus 13. That's terrific. We played the game out, and it was really good that we continued to play the game out and made sure that it was an 80 plus point win, because as much as people might want to say it was just the Eagles, the naysayers would have jumped on us quick smart if we'd ended up being only a 50-point win after leading at 60-odd points at three-quarter time. So, and on that, I was able to yell out at, when we got past 40 points that I thought we were safe, and got a few chuckles with that one. But fortunately, we were. I did wait till we were over 40 for that gag.
I think everyone around me had that same joke in the chamber, because it was going around.
Whispered perhaps, a few shell-shocked, and I didn't yell out percentage, which, as I said to you before we started, which is I still blame myself for when we kicked the first goal against the Bombers. I can't even remember when that was, 97, 98 was it? And to go 48 points up, and Salmon went berserk in the last quarter. I yelled out percentage, and it's the very last time I've done that at the footy, unless it's like 1 minute to go or something, and Salmon went berserk and we lost that game. So we probably got two of the top 4 or 5 biggest comebacks from three-quarter time. We've also got one where we were I remember we came back from three-quarter time against the Dockers, I think, at the MCG, and I reckon that was a 40-odd point lead at three-quarter time. So pressure points.
It was 1992, by the way, that Essendon game.
1992. Just I want to go back to, but the pressure last week was berserk. The numbers were really weird. It was 180 or something, and then 150, then 180, and then 150. It was like a 25-point gap between the pressure ratings. It was really crazy numbers. So in terms of pressure points are the weighed sum of pressure acts. Physical pressure acts are worth 3.75 points. Closing acts, 2.25. Chasing acts, 1.5. And corralling are 1.2. Jack Viney, season average 51.8 pressure points. That's bananas. 57 points in this game to be our highest pressure rated player. This one really jumped out at me. The rest is all senior players in that list. Harris Track, good game, 45 pressure points against his season average 36. Harrison Petty was a big one, 44 pressure points and only a season average of 19.1. Really brought his pressure, and I really liked his game. I mentioned Cade Chandler, 37 against his season average 34. Clary, his season average is an absolutely phenomenal 50.9, but he was our 5th highest rated player, 35 pressure points, but I liked his game, and it was less, sort of relying on just being the tackle player. But the one I wanted to highlight was our second highest rated player in terms of, our second number pressure points and pressure acts. With 22 individual pressure acts by way of contrast or context. Jack Viney had 23, 53 pressure points against a season average of 26.1. Caleb Windsor had his second most pressure, and I just was really impressed with his game. And I think, it really bodes well for him moving forward in terms of, I think he's found his position, and he was excellent. Right down the bottom one, just to pick one out, for Blake Howes had my sort of game. He had 0 pressure acts and 0 pressure points. But I didn't actually think he played that badly. Some notable numbers: we scored 11-5 to 4-4 from our intercept chains in the game, our second best return this season for that stat. Cozzy, as you mentioned, Cozzy was a little quiet, but as you mentioned, he had a game-high 10 score involvements from his 26 disposals, which given he only scored 1 point, that's a remarkable number. Given almost half of his disposals were part of scoring chains, that's crazy, and that's perhaps why he got 2 coaches' votes despite what I thought was a pretty quiet game. And it's just more evidence why he's arguably our most important player behind Maxi, and I just love watching him play footy.
Yeah, when he gets the ball, he always looks exciting. I think he fluffed a few kicks where they just didn't sort of hit the target as he probably would have wanted, but he had 10 score involvements. Did you say? I think I said that earlier.
Yeah, 10 score involvements, game high, 10 score involvements.
He still did a lot of things. It's just because he didn't kick 3 goals that were probably being harsh on him, but he's always dangerous.
Well, what was interesting, he didn't play. This is, I think, again, in terms of there's still so much to play for this season. And when we get to the changes next week, it's interesting because I think it's really important Casey make finals if they can, obviously if they can. But I think it's really important for the club because a lot of those younger players, of which Cully was one of them, but, I'd really hope that Mentha kicks on because Cozzy didn't play up forward. He was really an on-baller for most of this match. For most of the games, Cozzy goes to the middle, takes a centre bounce attendances and goes straight back to the forward line. The last 2-3 weeks, he's been playing basically as a full-time mid and going to stoppages as well. And, so if he's playing as a pure mid, he's not up forward kicking goals. So it really puts an emphasis on, players like, well, I guess Ricky Mentha being the obvious one, of being able to take that next step and give us some freedom to be able to use Cozzy as a mid when we need to, and then to swap him forward when we want to do that too.
All right, let's get into our questions. So we've got Rumpole writes, on behalf of your loyal Demonland podcast listeners, we humbly petition you to produce 2 Demonland podcasts this week. If a 6-point loss is the catalyst for a week's cancellation, then surely an 83-point victory deserves 2 shows. And Harvey Wallbanger says, nice to see the pod return this week. I wonder, will we cover both the Saints game and today's game? Well, I won't be covering the Saints game. If B-Man wants to, by all means, he can take a few minutes to discuss that if he wants. I've got nothing left in the tank to talk about it. The final quarter, it really broke me. I was gutted, absolutely livid, and I've watched a lot of Melbourne losses in my time, some crushing, embarrassing, inexplicable losses, but that one last week just hit differently. It was spineless. I thought it was insipid. And I'm talking about the last quarter, from players to coaches. I just couldn't bring myself to relive it, let alone analyse and dissect it with any sense of clarity or detachment from the anger and embarrassment that was burning inside of me. I didn't want to hear a single word about how great the 3 quarters before it were, because none of that mattered to me. That last quarter just undid everything. Any positives were torched in the space of about 30 excruciating minutes. And let's be honest here. Yes, we were 46 points up, but the Saints were absolutely, I thought, deplorable to that point in the game. And we didn't exactly dismantle a juggernaut. We did what we should have done in those 3 quarters, and then we let them back in. We gave them a sniff. We let them believe, and then they walked all over us. And we know what happened. It was a humiliating collapse. Another shameful record etched besides our name. Added to the pile on, what have we got? Biggest losing margin in a game. Second biggest losing margin in a grand final. And now the biggest fourth quarter comeback. Blowing a 46-point lead in a dead rubber, sure, but that doesn't make it any less of a stain against the name of the club that we love. And it's only been a little over 3 years since one of the most joyous, cathartic, transcendent days of my life, and I guess all of yours who are listening, life as a footy fan. And now I feel like I barely recognise this team, and many of the names are the same, but it's the shadow of a team that's forever etched in my mind, heart and soul. And that memory, it was once a beacon. Now it feels like a lifeline that we're all clinging to as the cracks widen and threaten to engulf the club into another abyss. And the truth is, I didn't want to talk about it at the time, not because I didn't care, but because, and this is going to sound cliched, but
because I
care too much. There you go. And I was honestly afraid that I wouldn't be able to control, that fire that was raging in my belly. And I knew I wouldn't be able to hold myself back from saying some things that I'm not sure I could walk back. The stuff about the players, the coaches, the high performance team, the administration, all of them. And I hoped that a few days would cool me off, and they didn't. The demon is still burning inside of me, and I know if I crack the lid even a little, I'll go into full rant mode, and it's best I let it boil inside me now. If I unleash, I know I'm going to regret it. So am I a sore loser? Absolutely, 100%. I wear that with pride. I should be sore after that. We all should be sore. Any fan who experiences that knows what that feeling's like. You talked about the 92 Bombers game, and it was that game gave me trust issues with Melbourne. I've never been able to trust Melbourne after that. And now they've done it again, and they've made it even worse. But B-Man, the floor is yours. Say whatever you want to say about last week. I won't stop you. I'll mute my mic. I know you like to search for positives, and if finding a silver lining means giving the team a pass for the first 3 quarters, then that's your prerogative. And I get it. We all cope in different ways, but I can't engage with it right now. I couldn't engage with it last week, lest it unleash the beast. So say your piece, and when you're done, we can move on and put it all behind us and just seethe quietly when we see that ugly stain in the record books for all of history.
Well, I have to say I'm glad that we didn't do the podcast, because I think our podcast relationship might have come crashing as like, but what about, I don't want to hear about no. Look, it was,
that's why I'm muting my mic now.
Yeah, look, this is, the last quarter was it was like a classic meme-worthy slow motion train wreck, that meme of the train going across and collapsing into that's what it felt like. And, a funny sense of inevitability. And, I think it was interesting because there was a Caroline Wilson article, which was, I thought, pretty well balanced, reasonable article, nothing particularly new in it, although a couple of actually interesting things that I didn't know in there. But its premise, I guess, was that last 8 seconds being sort of representative of some of our challenges. And I think that was true, is in the sense that there was a failure of leadership in that last quarter from our senior players. You can't put it on the younger players, but, I was going crazy. It's just like, just kick a point. They just needed to kick a point. So there seemed to be a collective lack of losing their head in terms of, basic 101 footy, which is in that circumstance, get 2 scoring shots ahead. And we had multiple chances to do it. I was sitting right above at the City Road end. So when Clary picked that ball up, the ball was moving around. We had 3 chances to get a clean possession. So he finally did. And I thought, oh, great, he's going to at least kick a point. I could not believe it. I almost that he couldn't score. But, of course, I'm glad I went. I said it to someone the other day. I'm glad I was there. I'm glad we didn't do the podcast, because I don't know much positive came out of it. But as I said, I think a real positive is, both of us supported D's for a long time, and there's been plenty of times where we've had horror losses and it's just compounded the next week. I was really proud of the team, that they brought the effort and intensity that I noted was reflected in the stats. So easy we could have packed it all in and not shown up and just gone through the motions, and we didn't. And I really got to respect that. And maybe, from a reframe a little bit, is that maybe it was that sort of opportunity to see, maybe it was better that we lost in the end rather than scraping a 2-point, win or whatever, and we still would have been bad. The 4 points don't really matter at this stage of the game. So perhaps it was a sort of wake-up call about, well, hold on, this is not what, where we want to be. We've got to show some leadership. And one of the things in the article that I found, that Caroline Wilson, was that Darren Shand spoke to the board maybe that was at the Michael Gleason article the day before. And I thought, well, so much for the leading teams sort of culture building resilience stuff that, I can't say I wouldn't be putting flyers in Melbourne fans' inboxes if I was Darren Shand this year at least. So, look, to be honest, it was a horror show. I don't know why, I'm not sure. I wasn't as angry as you. I wasn't as angry as I was after the Essendon game, for instance. It was, like when you think about all the games that we've seen, is that it just makes success, all the richer when we get there, and we'll get there. So, as I said, I'm glad I went, and I'm really glad I went on the weekend. It doesn't wash it away. It was horrible leaving the ground. I went with Terence from Belgium. Statistics show that he's 100% not a lucky charm, 2 from 3. In fact, we haven't spoken since then, and perhaps it was Terence's fault that whole thing happened. No, that's a joke, Terence, if you're listening. But, maybe we never have a game like that. One positive is, when can we break those embarrassing records? That thread was going strong in the 21 to 24, 23 period, Andy. There was lots of records for us to unwind. Maybe we can come back from a 47 three-quarter time margin to smash a team next season.
Well, then I'll say, why were we 50 points down against a team? I don't care that we won. We shouldn't have been 50 points down. And you just said that, the record might be wiped away. Well, 1992, it took 29 years to climb that mountain.
Well, we number 2 before. Look, Andy,
So
in every crisis is an opportunity, plenty of learnings. Every crisis creates an opportunity. We stuck fat and we came out and win. I'm bloody glad we had Eagles next week, next game, though, episode.
We'll talk about that a bit later on, because there is a question about whether... But let's get into the next one. And it is about some positivity, because as much as I didn't want Big Man talking about positives from last week, Wells 11 says so much negativity on this site, and it's referring to Demonland. I'm so over the constant club bashing, coach bashing and player bashing that's taken over. I mean, yes, of course, it's been a very disappointing year with cruel ways of losing and a killer loss versus the Saints. But can you please include a bit of looking at the positives? Well, Wells 11, you're in luck. I'm going to try and focus on the positives this week, and you'll see that reflected in the questions and topics that we've got coming up. But as for your comments about the negativity on Demonland, I was tempted to say, welcome to Demonland. You must be new here. And I saw that you joined the site in 2012, so you know the drill. Misery is practically our love language at Demonland. MFCSS, you were there for that. It's certainly back, and it's back with a vengeance. But enough doom and gloom. Let's move on to the positives. One of the positives that came from the game, Jai Cully, Dominion writes, why have the footy department been hiding Jai Cully until 4 rounds to go? He's exactly what we have been needing from any of our traded-in recruits. Tall, athletic, able to play forward, wing, mid, and can take a great grab and kick a goal. Another blight on our selections throughout the year. Well, that's a bit negative, mate. Not positive. The Panglossian replied to that remark and said, I thought Cully played much better in the seniors than any of his Casey games. I haven't seen any of Casey's game. I'll get you. You might have seen some, so I'll get you in a minute, man, to speak about that. Spirit of Norm Smith says, Jai Cully, great story. He could be a player, not sure where he fits though. He's too slow for the wing. He got caught out a few times as the Eagles ran past or away from him. Good marking, good kick, perhaps half forward. So the Jai Cully story, it's fantastic. He was taken by the Eagles with their first pick in the 2022 mid-season rookie draft. So not even the mid-season draft, the mid-season rookie draft. And then he just joined the Demons in the supplemental selection period just 3 weeks before the 2025 season began. He notched up his first win in his 13th game, but it has been 1,112 days from his debut to his first win. It's a big man, and I liked what I saw of him. He plays very tall. He's listed as 194 centimetres, but looked almost the same height as Petty, who stands 197.
That's because of Pets' continual hunching over and stand up, young man.
Yeah, and
Just while I think about it, Pets has got a fade. I don't know, must have had a haircut for the weekend where he's got a fade on one side, a fade on the other, and a huge bloody ball patch on the top of his head. It's like he's got the triple fade.
He might have to go. He might have to just shave it all off.
It's like
But anyway, this isn't hair shaming. So
Jai Culley's got bloody good hair. Come on, let's face it.
He does. He's got a nice shock of hair. He used to have the dreadlocks when he was at the Eagles. Track is 186 centimetres. Clary 189. Gawny is 208, as we know. And he didn't look like he was towering over Jai Culley. So I don't know. I think he might be taller than the 194. But anyway, enough of height talk. He's got a great pair of hands, with the exception of one howler that he should have kicked that goal. That was a terrible kick, but he kicked a couple of goals. He had 13 disposals, took 7 marks, as I mentioned before. And I think we should definitely continue playing him for the remainder of the season to just see what he can do. Big man, your thoughts and where you'd like to see him play, and any observations of him before at Casey that you've seen.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been bullish on him all season, and I said a few times on the podcast this year that he was one of my real positives coming out of games at Casey, and that I really felt that he's got something that I thought he could make it and still do. Like he had played 12 games. It's pretty remarkable, isn't it? 13, lucky 13 for him. His 13th game, he gets a win, and it's a nice synergy that he gets a win against the team that he'd lost 12 games with. So I've been bullish about him all season, and it's interesting. I mean, in terms of positivity, Dominion, I think it's pretty harsh on the footy department in terms of. I think they've managed his development just brilliantly, given. He didn't come in, he didn't do a pre-season with us. He did his pre-season with the Eagles. So he didn't even join the club to, what was it? It was
3 weeks before the start of the season.
Yeah, it was end of Feb or whatever. So I actually, that's what you want to develop him. That you bring him in when you're ready. I actually think that's a really interesting point by Panglossian, that he played better in this game than any of his Casey games. I'm not sure that any of his Casey games, but what I noticed, I've watched a fair bit of Casey this year, and it's really good actually that the AFL stream those games, because that means you can watch them. Crazy there was a bye this weekend, but. What we saw is what at Casey you saw a fair bit of his ability to work up and down the ground. He lacks a bit of pace, I reckon. So I agree with Spirit of Norm Smith around that. But he very much like Langford is that what he makes he lacks in raw leg speed. He makes up for in his high footy IQ and his decision making. He's got high footy IQ. He's a left footer who's got a neat kick, hits targets. And that marking ability, he really showed that at Casey. That was really evident. It was clear that was one of his strengths in these games at Casey. Also, his toughness at Casey. That's the thing that stood out for me at Casey. And just in this game, this is his debut for the club after, when did you say his last AFL game was?
It wasn't his last AFL game. I don't know when that was, and I can check that up in a moment. But it was his from debut to this game was 1,112 days. But he played on the wing in an almost sort of identical role to Harvey Langford, box to box, and being a marking option when he pushed forward, which he exploited really well, better than Langford. By way of contrast, Harvey's quarter was player rating for the game was 14.3. In his first game for the club, a Demons fan growing up. I can't remember if you mentioned that. Big D's fan growing up. His family was there, and some good footage when I watched it on the replay. His player rating was 15.1. He had time on ground 76%, disposals 13, as you said, but his disposal efficiency, arguably it's not great. 92.3, 312 metres gain. Inside 50, he had 5 inside 50s. By way of
contrast, Clary, who had a great game, only had one more with 6. He had 7 contested possessions, one more than Harvey Langford. He had 5 post-clearance possessions, ground ball get. He had 2 of his marks, his 7 marks were contested, including that screamer that he was just set for, went back and kicked that. He had 3 goals, 3 shots for 2 goals. His score involvements were impressive. He had 5 score involvements and 8 pressure acts. So terrific game of footy by the young bloke. I actually disagree with Norm Smith there in terms of his position, and there's a question, so I'll unpack that a little bit more in a sec, because I disagree that he's too slow for the wing. It's interesting because he's no slower than Langford, who's on the other wing, and there's a question about or a comment about this shift in the game with wingers being bigger, which we'll talk to, and he fits that mould perfectly. So I can see him playing one wing and Langford playing the other. So a terrific game by him, and don't you love debutants? It's great.
Yeah, it was really nice to see. Every time he went near the ball, the crowd was really up and about for him, which was good to see. Well, let's get on to the next one. Master Chief writes, another stellar performance. Surely Max Gawn is now a lock for his 8th All-Australian jacket. The spirit of Norm Smith says Max led from the front. He's locking in their ruck All-Australian 2025 role. He's a legend. Surely they can't think Grundy or Cameron or Sherry are better this year. Red and Bluebeard says, I noticed a few times yesterday that Gawn would let JVR or Petty take a ruck contest in the forward 50 while he stayed a kick behind the play. Is this something new? I must say I like the idea if it means preserving Max for a season or 2 longer. As he showed yesterday, he can kick a goal, but that is better left for to specialist forwards, in my opinion. So if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure that Max always lets the key forwards take the ruck in the forward 50 unless he's floated down there and happens to be there when the ball goes out. He usually won't. If he's out of the forward 50, he won't go in, especially to take those rucks. I'm pretty sure. So big man.
No, that's right. And also the other big change this year is that they're not kicking down the line to him. That's really, and it's interesting because he has to be All-Australian. I'd make him All-Australian captain, actually. The
media's trying to make a big case for Grundy. I haven't watched too many Sydney games in the back half of the year, but they're really making a case to try and get Grundy in. Sherry he's dropped off because North, they just don't want Max to get it for some reason.
You cannot. Like Max Gawn, he's been phenomenal this season, and so he doesn't take the rucks up forward. And Petty, I thought, did really well, including setting up a goal for Langford with his strengths. And I was a bit surprised. It was great to see Petty clunk some marks,
he took some nice marks. But you know what? I know he can take those marks. It's when he's body on body, I think he gets pushed over. But then again, sometimes in defence, he would take. Those be a bit stronger in defence. I don't know, maybe it's a bit different.
I think early in the season, when he just gets caught too often in a wrestle.
Yeah, he's not good with the wrestle.
He's got to jump at the ball and take those marks, and you could just see how the difference, how different we look when we start clunking him up forward, and so, but getting back to Maxi, he took 3 contested marks. I don't think he's ever, the players that you think, is players who keep improving. And I don't think he's ever marked as well as he is now. He's contested marking, and just his ability to read the ball in flight I can't recall anything like it. The only player who, it reminds me of Simon Madden for a small period, when Simon Madden was just marking everything, and the other player that just in different style, but in terms of mark, Templeton and not Templeton, Dempsey and Teasdale, just their ability to clunk those marks. And, his marking's been unbelievable, but that has been a big change, is they're not kicking down the line to him as much. And I don't know, if you ever watch him, it's just well worth watching him for 2 or 3 minutes in a game of footy, put the binoculars on him and watch him go, because as soon as there's a change in direction, or we lose the ball or we win the ball, he just sprints. He sprints to either get back in defence or get forward. And I think that's been really important, and it speaks. We do need those players marking down the line because I think they've clearly wanted to avoid Maxi getting chopped out. There's no world in which he is an All-Australian, and he'd be surely captain. He's he's an all-time legend. At one point, it was hilarious when he kicked that goal. He's beyond legends. He's a legend of the Melbourne Footy Club. He's a legend of the AFL. He's the best ruckman I've ever seen, bar none. Certainly, he's arguably the best Melbourne footballer I've ever seen in terms of his impact, his everything. And I think one of the things about just harking back to last week, not wanting to open up your still unhealed scar there, Andy, it was one of the things that I reckon that it did highlight is who had to front the media again? Goody and Maxi. Yeah. It's like the club needs to give Maxi a chop out, and players like Track and I don't know, Clary's not a natural speaker, but someone else needs to stand up.
No, Track might not even be there next year. So.
Well, but whatever. Some of his senior teammates, I'll give credit to Jack Viney. He was front of the media after this game, and also his attitude. But he's everything to our footy club, and it's not possible for me to respect both him as a person and as a footballer, and I just would be I'm so pissed off with the AFL that it's not funny if they play ducks and drakes and don't make him the All-Australian ruck, and I'd say he deserved to be captain this is year. 8 times All-Australian puts him up in super rare territory, and that's exactly where he should be. And another awesome performance, another plus 20 rated game for him, he's the heart. Robbie Flower is the only player who comes close to Maxi as being a heart and soul of the Melbourne Footy Club, and I'm just so grateful that he plays for the D's, and he plays for the D's in a period where I've been able to watch him.
Lefty writes, Harvey Langford continues to impress me no matter what position he's played in. I liked him being played deep in attack, 3 goals, and he was a fingertip away from clunking a couple in the square and could have ended the match with 5 goals. He's going to be an absolute star of this footy club. Spirit of Norm Smith adds, I think Harvey Langford back into rising star contention. Thought he might get rested, but looks still full of run. Only knock on him, get a right foot. Even Bont has to kick on his right sometimes. It's been another great game for our first pick in the draft this year. And I agree, he could have kicked a couple of extra goals. He just didn't get those grabs, which he sort of...
Yeah, which he will. He'll start grabbing them. Yeah. I'm actually, like Norm there, I think that's a good comment. Who was it? Was it... Yeah. So that thought he might get rested and still looks full of run. His cohort, his buddy in arms, Xavier Lindsay, he looked gassed and rested. He looks like he's got a second wing, Langford.
But they played him in the forward line quite a bit, so he probably didn't.
I think he was playing wing pretty much, and then just pushing forward. And the same with Cully. They were playing very similar roles. And again, there's a comment about that next, I think. And he just watch him. And it's a bit similar to as my comment about Jai Cully, is that he's not super quick by foot, but he's super quick by brain. His brain is so quick he's like Cos, is that sometimes Cos I think is too quick. He's too cute. He goes, but like Langford's ability to not, like, it just looks like he knows what he's going to do before he wins the possession. And his ability to get distance off just one step is a huge weapon. He kicks to advantage, as I talked about against, I think it was the Roos a few times. He's also strikes me as a leader. It was great for Track to give him that goal, partly because I reckon Track might have missed even from that. But He is gonna. He's got 200 game player written all over him, and leader written all over him. He's got the tools, and I talked about this at the beginning of the season. He's already as tall as Bont. Bont grew 3 centimeters between his first year and his third year. He's going to be a unit, the Bison, in 2 or 3 years' time. Seriously big lad already. Given him another couple of years of AFL pre-seasons, and he's going to just be an incredibly hard matchup when he pushes forward. He'll start clunking those marks. He's a beauty.
Singer writes, I like that we are experimenting with different setups in the middle. It was good to see Windsor attend centre bounces. Do you guys have any numbers as to the number of centre bounces he and others attended on the weekend? I think we should be using these last 3 games to experiment with different players in the middle, particularly if we're likely to lose either Petrarco or Oliver or both. Perish the thought. Ross Millen says, you can never have too many midfielders, but do we have too many players whose best position is midfield but are less effective elsewhere? Spear of Norm Smith says, Jack Viney, broken hand, no worries. He's a tough warrior. 8 tackles and 13 clearances. He's as tough as anyone ever to wear the red and blue. I think we saw glimpses of the old Clary. He was good and saw some reminders of his run away from the contest. Windsor was quiet for 3 quarters and struggled. 7 possessions, then 9 possessions with his run and carry through the middle and hitting targets. That's what we want to see. And what says, with the likes of Butters, Pickett's, Wanganeen, Millerer, I'm still triggered by that name, and now Windsor moving into the midfield positions, is the big-bodied mid being transitioned out for an entirely different style of player where pace and ability to break away from the contest is paramount over ability to win contested footy as a physical beast? As such, do you think Langford will continue to be a wingman / forward in 2026, or will he become an inside mid at AFL level as he was at junior levels? Mr. Freeze says, wing positions and predictions. If Jai can lock down a wing role in 2026, where does that leave Lindsay? Thoughts on seeing Jai and Langdon back on the wing, Lindsay at half-back and Windsor continuing an on-ball role? So, B-Man, your thoughts on the midfield this week, albeit against the third-string Eagles midfield, and also some comments about the smaller frame midfielders being preferenced over the big-body mids, and then perhaps comment on your preferred wingers.
Yeah, it's actually interesting because there's in terms of the question, the first question, I'll go in order. Yep. In terms of Singer's question about the numbers, centre bounces. So we do have those numbers there in the stats file thread on Demonland. Centre bounce attendances, no surprise, Maxi had 27.
Max, we know that he's going to.
Yeah. So of our mids, Cozzy had 24. So 73% of the centre bounce attendance he was at. Equal, Caleb Windsor had the equal most of our mids, 24 as well. And so he was basically a permanent mid. He was also mid round the ground. And I really, really liked, there's a question about this too later, but he basically, it seemed like swapped in and out with track. And so he had 24 centre bounces attendances, and Clary had 23 and Jack Viney 21. Track only had 7. So that's our midfield. And I think that point about what is, don't think it's so much, I think that the change for the midfield rotation is actually also meant there's been a change on the wings. Is for me the change for the midfield is that you can only have one or two, maybe bull. Like I'd say Butters is a bull. Like he's tiny, but he's a bull. But what you need is breakaway pace. That you need players with leg speed. Now we'll talk a bit later about the Bulldogs. They're number 1 for clearances in the AFL, and they've got the best clearance player in the AFL. What's his name? Libba. And so you need bulls in the middle. There's no question about that. You just don't need 3 like our setup, and that's the problem, which is why I like Track going forward. And it seemed like he was swapping a little bit with Windsor. Windsor's got pace, got raw pace. He looks a natural. I'd forgotten that he did he play as inside mid as a junior? I'd forgotten that.
I don't know.
I don't recall that. But yeah, I mean, I guess if that's what people are saying. So I really like it. it means that you've got Cos and I was trying to work out how many times that they were together. They must have been together a lot. If they both had 24 centre bounce attendances, it's almost, statistically impossible for them not to. So Cozzy and Caleb playing together in the same midfield, that's enough pace. That's what you want. And of course, then the question comes, well, what do you do with track? I've long thought that I'd love Oliver to be able to develop his forward craft. I don't see why with his footy IQ he couldn't, but he's just never been able to play forward. So he's got to be a midfielder. And then, I think you can have Viney being a defensive pressure forward and swapping into the midfield as needed. I really like that mix of players. Having Cozzy's pace and Windsor's pace is really what the modern sort of midfield's like. And then the issue what I was going to say about the wings is there's been a real trend in the change of the wings. So I'm pretty right to say that Jordan Dawson has been sort of primarily plays as a wing. He's really tall. There's been a real move to the wings becoming taller players. So in the last few years up till this year, the wings were like a high half forward in terms of their box-to-box running, and the obvious one was Langdon. He's now playing a high half forward role, essentially. The high half forward role that I've been banging on about for the last few years, that's really replaced the wing role. So someone like Chandler plays the game like a winger would have a couple of seasons ago, box to box running, inside 50 to defensive 50, running all day up and down that wing, and pushing forward and helping out on defense. Now that's been replaced more and more by a lot of teams with big, tall wingers. And so I really like Jai Cully on one wing and Langford on the other, because when they push forward, then suddenly they become a marking threat and a match-up problem. And we saw that, Jai Cully's second mark was an absolute beauty. It was a great kick to that spot, and it means that you've got a challenge. Then what sort of player do you put on Langford and Cully? You've got to have someone who can at least defend them if they push forward as a marking option. So I think we're probably where the game is heading at the moment, and maybe a little bit ahead of that. Where does that leave Lindsay? He's also a player who played a lot inside mid. Who do you play for? Power, for Gippsland Power. He was an inside mid halfback flanker predominantly. He didn't play wing, only a little bit. So he is a lot wider and a lot stronger. Remember he had a PCL injury and not a full pre-season. Another pre-season, he's going to be definitely a inside mid option, and he's got pretty good wheels. But I'd like to see him ultimately go back to the halfback flank and then be a mid option, and that's what I think will happen. Is that Jai Cully's, hopefully he can cement that position. And I agree that Windsor's didn't work out back in defence, and the club have obviously agreed that too. He looks much more comfortable in the middle, and you can use his aggressive running forward of the ball and getting out the front of those contests. And I'd like to see Lindsay go back and taking his spot essentially, and maybe, I don't know what the talk is, that McVee hasn't signed. That's never a good thing. But if McVee does go, that would be really bad in terms of losing one of our best kicks. But Xavier Lindsay going back would be a pretty good replacement.
All right. Yes, there we go. Mandy Lorian says, I was going to raise this after the Saints game last week, but the same issue cropped up again in this match. What on earth is going on with the centre bounces at Marvel Stadium? To be fair, centre bounces have been deteriorating across all venues in recent years. It's clear that the current crop of umpires just aren't as proficient at the bounce, and I wouldn't be surprised if we eventually see it scrapped altogether or reserved only for the start of games and quarters. I don't watch many non-Demons games, and thankfully we don't play much at Marvel, so I haven't been paying close attention to the games of this venue. Over the past 2 weeks of this venue, there have been a staggering number of recalled bounces. Is there something about the surface of this godforsaken stadium that's contributing to the problem? I think the days of the bounce are numbered. I think we're sort of hearing whispers of that through the media, and I think we'll begin to see it to begin matches, perhaps at the beginning of every quarter as well. But other than that, I think it's just going to be a throw up. And I've heard Max say that he'd prefer to see them thrown up. And I actually spoken to him about this, and I think that's his preference. I guess that when it's thrown up, you know exactly where the ball's going, and it takes a bit of that randomness out of it. It's a pity that the umpires these days can't seem to consistently get it right. It's a lost art form, surely. But it seems like it's going to go. That's what I'm thinking, yeah.
And it's one of those things I could care less, to be honest, but it's ridiculous when they do let one go that, like there was one in that match, I'll give the umpires, I thought they were good, as I said. There was one in that match where Maxi had assumed it was going to get called back and it didn't. And that's where, and I think that, there's enough strangeness about our game without, not giving, maybe bounce it at the beginning of each quarter as a nod to tradition.
Well,
and then after that,
that's what will happen.
Yeah, and then after that, you want each, given the importance of centre bounces in terms of winning territory and potentially scoring, you want some equity, don't you? The other thing too is for them to get their act together in terms of throwing the ball in consistently. So the thing about Marvel, I'm not sure if there's some issue in the centre, but it's, I haven't heard any complaints in the last couple of years about the how hard it is, but it's built on a concrete, car park basically. So, it's there's a car park directly below it, which was the cause of why it was so hard on players in the first few years. It's 25 years old now, Marvel. I wonder if it's time to knock the thing down.
I don't know what happened. What happened with Bailey Fritch's kick that
he hit the turf.
He hit the turf, or wasn't the turf that stuffed him up? He hit the
turf, yeah. Speaking, I watched I saw that on the replay. I had no idea it was. That was. I thought it was he got a score assist for that. He got a mark for that, the score involvement. He got a kick. Just while I think of it, I watched the replay and there was some funny commentary, and I forget the phrase for when you muddle up words, as I do. And I'm going to get this wrong, but Jared Healy cracked me up. At one point he said they've got a player called, is it Rozzo? Well, it's Bazzo. And he said, he called him Razzo. He said, and Razzo, I'm sorry, Spazzo. So he hasn't got the Razzo's someone isn't that from Greece or something, or and then he's still got the Bazzo wrong. So, and there was some funny commentary in that game. But where were we? The ground. The ground, yeah. Yes, that's probably the concrete, but yeah, get rid of the bounce. I'd be happy for it. Get rid of the bump and get rid of the bounce.
Get rid of the bump, you say? Okay.
Well, we also didn't have because we didn't have the pod last week, we didn't talk about the Stephen May thing, but maybe we'll hold that over for the next show.
If you want to talk about it now.
It's in the revision mirror.
What can we do? Yeah.
Well, the positive is that, this week is going to be really interesting because no May again this week, and then there's going to be, a bit of a challenge in terms of their tall forwards.
It certainly will be.
Maybe Jed Adams gets a crack, but we'll get to that a bit later.
All right. Here's the takeaways from the match against poor opposition and our run home. Smurf says, I'm not one to look a gift horse in the mouth, and after last week's final quarter collapse, a comprehensive mauling like that felt cathartic. But honestly, how much can we really take away from a win against a side floundering as badly as the Eagles are right now? They've managed just one win all season, and we're missing key players like Waterman, Reid, Yeo, Allen and McGovern. I'd go so far as to say that most VFL teams would have rolled them on the weekend, and any finals contender would have blown them off the park even more than we did. The real test comes over the next 3 weeks against genuine opposition. That's when we'll get a clearer picture of where we truly stand. Buck Neckett says the game seemed bog average for most of the afternoon compared to the Maggies/Bears and the Crows/Hawks games. It seemed low intensity and poor skill. However, you can only play the team you were up against at the time on the park. Will we be showing? Will we be any showing in our last few games, or was that the last hurrah for 2025? Travi14 says, okay, we beat the bottom side, but we beat them by 84 points. When was the last time we put a side away like that? This is the kind of response we have wanted from the Ds many a time and never got it. So just a bit of praise for that, but I'm still boiling from last week. And this podcast's own Binman, you replied, when was the last time we kicked 10 goals in a quarter? I thoroughly enjoyed going to the footy yesterday. Loved it. Shout out to the 16,000 Ds fans who were there with me. Great energy. Doug Remus says, good to see a response yesterday. In my opinion, that's a par win against a club that's rock bottom. What will it take on field for you to trust the team again leading into next season? It's going to take a long time for me to trust this team. For me, and this is Doug Remus saying, I need to see in the last 3 games of the year is them having a genuine crack. I want us to win 1, maybe 2 of the last 3, and if so, I can see a path forward. But if we turn up half interested, have to listen to the same post-match rubbish, then I'm off us until I see something to believe in. Goes D's responds to Doug Remus saying, are we better than any of those 3 teams? If not, it does not mean that we'll lose to all of them. Of course, we should go in thinking we can win them, play well, and at the very least not embarrass ourselves. But especially giving all the crap this year, I hardly think 3 honourable losses will add more grief. And Sam6172 says, what would the panel think is a fair pass mark for our last 3 games? Dogs, Hawks and Pies. I just want to compete. 4 quarters of effort, if not skill. If we could pull an upset over one of them, then I'll be over the moon. But I think realistically, with all 3 of them fighting for finals/top 4 spots, then we will well and truly be up against it. No capitulations, no slow starts or turning into witches' hats to finish the game. I hope they do it for the fans and give us some hope that the future is okay. So, B-Man, look, you can only beat who you're playing in front of you, and we did that convincingly. But let's be realistic. The side we dismantled is an absolute basket case right now. They're ravaged by injury to key players. Clearly, they're miles off the pace. And honestly, if we'd scraped over the line, I would have been furious. And I'll admit I was a little jittery early on in the game. But that might have been the lingering trauma from last week's final quarter collapse, made worse by the fact that we were actually back at the scene of the crime. Should we have won by more? Maybe, probably.
Should we have won by more?
But to be honest, I'm always greedy. You know me, I'm greedy.
Should have we won by more?
I wanted 100 points. Give me 100 points. We've been through crap the last 2 years. I wanted 100 points. I just think I needed that just to get some revenge for last
10
week.
goals in a quarter of footy. That's
Yeah, but I want more. We should have kicked 12. And while we're at it, it felt good to notch up a massive win and see a 10-goal quarter. But, let's not get carried away. I think Adelaide, a team that has their act together, will likely obliterate West Coast this week. So, yes, enjoy the win, but we've got to temper the takeaways. That result alone doesn't, I think, tell us where we're at. So I think the next 3 weeks will. We're facing 2 sides. We're taking 2 sides, the Hawks and the Bulldogs, who are vying for a place in the 8, and then the Pies, who could be fighting for a top 4 finish. They're the real tests, and honestly, I'd love nothing more than to throw a spanner in the works for one or all of them. So, B-Man, what do you reckon? What should our expectations be heading into the last stretch of the season?
Well, just back on the Eagles, I responded a post of Perlo that said, sorry to be horrible, but that Eagles game was always going to be mean less than nothing. They were abysmal and totally incapable of bringing the game to us. And my response was that I just, my personal view is that every single AFL game is meaningful. It doesn't matter, regardless of the opponent or whether finals are no longer a possibility. It's a given that West Coast were poor. We talked about their outs. As I said, though, I thought their effort level was pretty good in the first half. It was pretty poor in the second half, but it was pretty good in the first half. But that doesn't mean the game's not meaningful. And there was a bunch of things that I thought I listed in my response to Perlo of why it wasn't the case for Saturday's game, including and not limited to it was such games a perfect opportunity to practice implementing a game plan and specific strategies. It's super important for a team like us of moving from one method to a completely different method. And as I said, we saw some really positive signs on that front in terms of how we transitioned the ball from our defensive half. As I noted, we scored 3 goals from a kick out, which is huge. Fritter continues the resurgent, which is good for him. Obviously, it's good for us. Fritter and Petty clunking their mark marks up forward reinforced how much better we are when we take advantage of our inside 50 kicks. And we're actually transitioning the ball this season pretty well, and we're getting it inside 50 hasn't been a problem for us. We just haven't finished off our work. And if we can in that space, we go up a couple of levels straight away. Regardless of your opponent, nearly 60% of inside 50s to score ratio is super impressive. We got a good chance to see Cully and see what he can bring to the table, and he was impressive. As we talked about, Maxi surely locked in his All-Australian selection and continued his amazing contested marking. Bowie had another blinder, and surely he must be in the All-Australian frame now. Clary played his best game, I thought, after quarter time in terms of real impact. His hands were awesome. His endeavour remains first class, which bodes well for next season. We got a good look at Windsor in the middle. He played his best game for the season. I think it's clear he'll play as a mid going forward, so we got a good sense of that. We kicked 10 goals in a quarter, as I mentioned. We won, but by nearly 15 goals, and Cos had a relatively quiet game. And as I said earlier, perhaps most importantly, we looked united, cohesive, played with great energy. The players seemed to enjoy ourselves. The leaders stood up. All of that is really terrific signs given last week's fourth quarter nightmare. And this idea that, it was one of the things that, I think was a comment like, the team in finals contention would have mauled, Eagles. Well, just looking at the Eagles' last handful of games, the Pies only beat them by 29 points at Marvel. All right, that was at round in June, just last month, or a month and a bit ago, only by 29 points at Marvel. Giants could only beat them by 59 points at Optus. Dockers in the Derby, only 49 points they beat them. So, it's just not, if you're going to knock Melbourne, well, that a finals team would have beaten them by more. That's just the facts don't support that. So, and in terms of our last three games is that, I think that if we're going to fairly assess the team, where if we're going to be objective about where the D's are at, we should take into account how we perform against the best teams that are motivated by playing finals. In the last month, we've been competitive against the top two teams on the ladder at the moment, the Crows, who are on top of the ladder, and the Pies. So we easily could have beat both teams, but for poor accuracy. We similarly competitive against the Suns, who are sixth with a bullet. And in May, we pushed the Lions, who were third on the ladder. So, in all of those games, our transition footy's been good. In almost all of those games, we likely win if we probably do win if we're AFL average for accuracy. So there's absolutely no reason to think we won't be competitive in the last 3 weeks, including this week. The facts are that we've been competitive against, 4 of the top 8, including the first, second, third team on the ladder. They're the facts. That's not sort of winding us up or being ridiculously positive. That's just, it is what it is. And so, I think that, that horror show in the last quarter, St Kilda, doesn't change those facts that we've been competitive against the very best sides. The knock on us has been we've been poor against the bottom 8 sides, and now we smashed a side by 83, and for some people that's not good enough. So, a lot to play for in the last 3 weeks, and I fully expect us to be competitive in all 3 games. And how good would it be to knock all 3 teams off their axis and stuff with their finals chances?
And then you'll have people complain, why couldn't we play like this all year? We'd have been playing finals and win a premiership.
Well, not on this podcast. No. We won't be saying that.
All right, there was no Casey game this weekend, so let's get straight into the changes. There's no injuries reported as yet from the game against West Coast. Jake Lever still listed as a TBC. He's unlikely to be playing again this season. Stephen May obviously still suspended this week, and Casey had the bye. So none of the players who were admitted last week or are on the fringe got a chance to show their wares. So, big man, any changes that you'd like to see happen this week against the Bulldogs? You mentioned maybe we need Adams or someone else in defence, but perhaps Petty can go back for that role. But then do you bring in Jefferson? Well, there's some options.
Yeah, who comes out after a win like that, I guess. But I was thinking something, Jed Adams maybe, but, I actually do like the idea of Petty going back and Jefferson coming in to a degree. I mean, the problem is who do you take out of who do you drop? Like no one, I thought Howes was serviceable, did some good things. They like his pace, obviously. It means, T-Mac's going to be, who gets Darcy, I guess, is the big question. But then you've got, you've got to cover two of them, but maybe T-Mac will get Darcy. And I mean, that could be, it's about stopping the ball coming in, isn't it? So it'll be really interesting to see who they do. I mean, Joe Cully's obviously going to be keep his spot. You reckon Sharp, seems a bit rough, the fella. So it's hard to see who make any changes. Honest, get on the back of that. Just the matchup challenge, I think, is a bit of a challenge in terms of their two key forwards in Norton and Darcy. But, who do we have this week in terms of our key defenders? T-Mac and, I mean, Howes almost played like a key defender, didn't he? So, it'll be interesting to see whether, I think Petty could go back and Jefferson forward, except for the fact that Goody has not wanted to do that all season, except when break glass. Maybe it is an opportunity to put Adams in, but you'd be throwing him into the Wolves a little bit, wouldn't you?
Oh, absolutely. I think so. Well, we'll see.
Is that any? The other thing we talked about a couple of weeks ago about, I was thinking I'd love to see Kenfield in. Not now, actually, because now I think there was a good comment on Demonland about the where Casey are at is there's a real opportunity for a group of young players to really take Casey forward and make a dent in finals. And maybe for players' development like Kenfield, who didn't have a pre-season, maybe we're better playing him, keeping him at Casey to practice winning at Casey and practice all of the things he's working on. And the same goes for Jefferson, arguably, and a number of other players there.
Let's get into the preview of this week's match. After 2 weeks in a row at Dockland Stadium, the Demons return to the MCG for their last home match of the season. The rest of the games are at the MCG, but this is our last official home game. The Bulldogs are coming off 2 massive wins with a combined total margin of 181 points. Their 2 matches prior to that were close losses to top 4 sides. They currently sit outside the 8, but have kicked the highest score this year of any team and have the second highest percentage, having had some huge wins this season.
And only just 137.3 to 138.6.
No, I think Adelaide were into the 140 at now.
Oh, yeah, sorry, you're right. Adelaide are 144. So third highest.
Yeah. Oh, they third highest, but they've had they've kicked the most.
Cats are 138. Yeah.
When the Bulldogs sense some weakness, they do go in for the kill and can have the ability to maul their opponents. I hope we don't see that. Big man, can the Demons spoil the Bulldogs' finals hopes and pull off an unlikely victory at the MCG on Sunday? That would be something, because they're a game out, aren't they? But they have some easy games. They've got us and West Coast.
They are.
And then
just looking at the ladder now. Yeah, they were really hoping that Freo would end up getting rolled, but they're 4 points out. They've got 2 easy games. They probably should win 2, but then they got Freo in the last game, so they'll probably need to win that. Because percentage, they'll get the year before that. 137.3 their percentage at the moment. If they don't make finals, that would be, that is an amazing percentage. I know was it last year maybe, or the year before, maybe it was the year before, the Crows had a really missed the 8 with a really massive percentage, but I don't think it was 137. It speaks to the way they play in terms of when they do get on top, they get on a roll. They number 1 in the AFL for uncontested possessions, and I think that's about, they love to get it out and run in waves, and they're looking really fit. They've got a hybrid version of that 217 model where they're flipping it around and running in waves. They're still playing something similar, but they're really they're not. They're number 4. They're 4 in contested possession per game, which surprised me. First in effective disposal per game. They put a big emphasis on hitting targets. Second in contested marks, which is huge. Second in marks inside 50, which is probably not a shock given the Darcy factor of it all. This one was really interesting. I was really amazed with this. First in centre clearances per game. And first in score involvements per game. So they really share it around. Fifth in tackles inside 50. First in least opponent stoppages clearance per game. Second in least opponent meters per game. The other one is first in uncontested possession. So they love to share it around to get it out to the outside runners and move it. I reckon we're a good show. I reckon we've got a good shot to, at least disrupt them. It'll all come to the contest. But, one of the interesting things about them being, they've got a really fantastic balance of being an outside running attacking team and inside grunt. And Libba is just, that personified. Bont's arguably the best player in the AFL, my favourite player who doesn't play for Melbourne, and he's got an amazing balance between his ability to play outside and inside, which I remember I read an article or heard an interview with Langford saying he, has completely modelled his game on Bont, which, it's a good player to model your game on, but he's similarly tall, he's left footer, he's got that inside-outside balance as well. Look, I'm quietly confident. If we bring the pressure, this is a game where our midfield bulls will actually match up well against theirs. The pace is a bit of a worry, but if you've got Cos and Windsor, that offsets that a little bit. And you've got Clary, Viney and Track rolling through the middle to be the midfield bull, particularly Viney and Claz to at least mitigate and break even with Libba. English is, I presume English is playing. He's not injured, is he? So, he always plays well against Maxi, but Maxi, he loves to take scalps. So I can see him running English, who is super fit, but really looking to work English over. I reckon we match up well against the doggies, and I'm quietly confident we'll do all right. Remarkably, the odds, we're 4.10. We were, and they're $1.44. That's about right. But the line's at 25 points in this game, and so the bookies in the market has us at just a touch over a 4-goal loss. I could see us challenging the doggies. The challenge really will be maintaining that for the entire match because, I'm pretty sure that the fitness, they're not as optimally fit, the Ds, as they'd want to be, and the doggies have been super fit. So, but if we can turn it into a scrap, what's the weather like? Have you looked at the weather?
No, I have not. But I did see that the Bulldogs have won 7 games by over 70 points this season.
Yeah, so when they do get on top, but they do put teams to the sword, but they've beaten up on a few average teams though. So I'm just looking at the forecast now.
17, partly sunny, but it's a 3. Yeah,
beautiful.
It'll be a nice afternoon. Yep.
Yep, 17, perfect. So yeah, look, I'm quietly confident we'll acquit ourselves really well, and a lot. It'll be interesting to see how they attack these last few games. There's, that was the thing, as I said, that I took most out of the game on the weekend is that we went into it with the right attitude and we won the contest. And I hope that that's exactly. We've got a 7-day break into this game, 8-day break into this game. I really hope that obviously. The last 3 weeks we come out firing, and I'm quietly confident. If I was going to have a bet on it, it would be on the D's on the line, and maybe a little bit for a win. So at 4.10, I'm really looking forward to the weekend. It'll be great to be back at the MCG. I haven't been to the MCG since June, I think. So I'm really looking forward to being back at the G and on a sunny afternoon. And unfortunately, it won't be with a red ball. It'll be a yellow ball for a 3:00 game. Yep. But
So they've got 2 injuries. Trelaw's out for a couple of weeks with the calf still, and Cody Waitman's out for the season. But that's it. They don't have any injuries.
Yeah. So here's our chance, and that's the way they'll be framing it: is let's finish the season strongly. If we can beat any of those 3 teams, it will be terrific, I reckon. What's interesting? Where did we end up last year? 14th, wasn't it?
Yeah, we're in the bottom six. At the moment.
14th. We're 12th, aren't we now?
Yeah,
So if we can get a win out of the next three, we're a chance at finishing, was certainly better than we did last season, which given how it feels, that would feel like a surprise in some ways, wouldn't it? And I just think there's a risk with all of the hopes that we had of making finals and the various sort of performances where we should have won, but we didn't for accuracy. And then you add the St Kilda game. There's a real risk of actually not seeing the woods for the trees and not actually recognising we're travelling actually pretty good in terms of implementing a new game plan, bringing in new players. A big thing will be our off season. Obviously, it is every year, but if Claz can get back somewhere near his best, and ditto for Track, and I really want Track to play forward. I just think that's the spot. Then things are a lot. From where I sit, things are looking a lot better than what a lot of people in the footy media and on Demon Land are giving us credit for, I reckon.
It certainly will be an interesting off-season, but we've got 3 games to go, so...
Just while I think of it, I meant to say this at the top, Andy, before we wrap up. Just wanted to flag to loyal listeners, George hasn't been on the show for personal reasons, but he'll be back with us at some stage. But just wanted to give him a massive shout out if he's listening, it'd be great when when we got him back on board.
Absolutely. And that's where I think we're going to leave it for tonight. We'll be back next week to break down our round 20. Are we in round 22? Yeah, 22, 23, 24. Yep, round 22 match against the Bulldogs, unless I throw another tanty this week. As always, your questions and comments form an integral part of the show. So thank you, our Demon Land posters who submitted questions and comments. Thank you to Rumpole, Harvey Wallbanger, Wells 11, D Minion, the Panglossian, Spirit of Norm Smith, Master Chief, Red and Bluebeard, Lefty Singer, Ross Millen, What Say What, Mr. Freeze, Mandalorian, Smurf, Bucknecked, Travie14, Doug Reamer, Go D's, Sam 6172, Damien Jr., Billy Bean, the Ox, the Pearl had something in there, but I didn't include it. Sorry, the Pearl. Old D, Clintosaurus, and Jane 02. Thank you to my co-host, Big Man. Thank you to you, our loyal listeners. And don't forget, leave us a 5-star review and a comment on Apple Podcasts, and we'll read it out and give you a shout-out on the next show. Go Demons.
Go Red Leggers.
Come on, Demons. Come on, Demons.